to the Fusion Artist Studio. My name is Ed Breen, I'm your host, and each week we will visit an artist in Marion and Grant County, let them talk about what it is that they're doing, what it is that they would like to do, tell us a little bit about where they have come here from, and take a look at the situation in the arts community in Marion and Grant County. Today we are on the campus of Indiana Wesleyan University, and we have two folks with us that are well known here on campus and throughout the community, Katie Wampler and Steve Wood. Both of you are involved in theater here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, why you're here, and what you're doing? Katie, we will start with you.
Great. I'm Dr. Katie Wampler. I'm the Artistic Director of Theater, and I'm also an Associate Professor. I have the privilege and the joy to be able to teach classes here on campus, as well as direct shows. I come from Texas. I was born in Louisiana and came up here, and I've been here for about 10 years now. And enjoying my time in Indiana. It just gets a little bit cold for this Texan.
So could you take us to Cajun country if we were nice to you?
I could. Yep, absolutely. I was born in Thibodaux, Louisiana. That's about as Cajun as you get.
It is. Steve?
I am a funny story. Actually, Katie and I went to school together at Texas Tech. So we weren't classmates, but we were office mates. So we shared an office in the dean's office for a couple years.
And grad.
Yeah, and grad office. So we actually knew each other in Texas. But I'm a native Hoosier. I'm from Indianapolis originally. And I've been back here for, this is now my 8th year. I'm the technical director, which means I get to handle all the, how we put the show up. So mostly I do scenic design, but sometimes I'll do lighting design and costume design. And then I get to direct as well. So, and I'm like her, I'm super lucky. I get paid to teach theater. So I have a wonderful job, and I've been doing theater. I've been acting up my whole life. I've been doing theater professionally since my 20s. So
it's legitimate now.
Yeah, I turned it into a career. So.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. On a college campus, a small college campus with a Christian orientation, theater can sometimes be just a little on the problematic side. Let's talk about that. What drew you to Indiana Wesleyan?
Well, actually, the job. I was looking for jobs. I was coming out of my PhD program. I was looking for jobs, and I actually wanted to teach at a Christian university. I had a really great experience at a small Christian school studying theater, because I think theater can do a lot of things for a community, which is to tell us who we are, who we could be, and who we must never become. And so we have the opportunity to do all types of theater for our community here at Indiana Wesleyan, as well as our overall community of Grant County and parents who come from long distances. And we want to tackle tough topics in both serious and comedic ways. And that's what Steve and I are really passionate about doing.
Steve?
Yeah, and I had a very similar reason for going into that. I went to a Christian school, and I had a great college experience. I love college. And I was actually, my life was going to go into like the ministry and clergy, and I thought I would be some preacher. And the relationship between theater and religion, especially in the West, is just, they're very close to each other. So it was pretty easy for me to shift out of sort of a pastoral pursuit into theater, because theater is about story. It's just, and we define ourselves with stories. We define our communities by stories. You know, Marion has stories that can be very hard to hear, but there's also stories in Marion that are wonderful to hear. Yeah. And you can't just have one version of your community or Grant County. So I love the idea that there's things here that we can celebrate in story, and then there's difficult conversations we can have. And I think both are necessary to have a healthy, just personally to be healthy, and then as a community to be healthy, because it's in both our struggle and victories that we learn who we really are as people.
Has COVID tossed a grenade into all of that for you?
I'd say a nuke. In the form of a grenade. Yeah, it was, we were like right in the middle of putting up a show. Katie had just finished directing Doubt, which you talk about difficult stories. You know, it dealt with abuse in the Catholic Church, with issues of race, with It was just a really dramatic play, and she had just finished it, and she did a killer job directing it, and the actors did a killer job. And then we were about to put up just a comedy. It was like lowbrow, very like Three Stooges, Marx Brothers, just physical pie in your face, literally pies in faces.
Literally.
And it was just ridiculous. And so that's like the stuff I really love. And we had just gotten it to where the kids
New depth.
yeah, new depth. Like, how can you make a pie in a face more thoughtful? And so the kids we had were excited. And you know how it is, Ed, when you work with young people, they find themselves and they find they could do things they didn't know they could do. And then they get excited about it. And they're younger than me, so they can physically do things I can't do. And they were doing that. And then boom, we go into lockdown. And so
we actually planned a season that we've had to revamp because we wanted to keep our actors and our crew members and our audience safe. And so we went back to the drawing board about July and said, all right, we're coming back. We both felt it was really important that we did something creative. Alongside of our classes, we feel like that's really important for who we are as a program. And so we went back to the drawing board and we came up with our season for this year. And our first show is going to be Vintage Hitchcock. And it's a radio play, a live radio play. Yep. And it's actually 3 of his films, one of them being silent that they have put dialogue into. So we actually are beginning rehearsals tonight. And in November, we're going to have a live performance as well as live stream, which is a really new thing for us that we're learning how to do. So as professors, we're learning new things to adapt to this time.
yeah.
Is it tough to accommodate an audience?
We will know more in November, but probably. Yeah.
But partly what we're doing is we're going to do it in the PAC auditorium because usually we do our straight plays in the black box, which typically accommodates between 100 and 125 full capacity. So we were looking at 25 or 50, depending on where our governor lands. But we've talked to individuals on this campus, and we're going to actually do it in the PAC auditorium. So we'll be able to social distance safer for our audience.
And
We won't pack it all the way out,
No.
so we'll still have a small audience. But hopefully, with the streaming, maybe parents who might come from a distance and might not be comfortable staying at a hotel could still take in the show. And maybe we'll have a broader audience too. But we still want a live audience because I think that's the hardest thing about COVID is not necessarily adapting creatively, but losing the physical connection you have with a live audience. Because going to a show is an event to itself, getting ready and making sure you have tickets and going to dinner beforehand. Like all of the things that a couple or a family does before the show is still part of what they experience with us.
Yeah.
So that is still important to communities and still important to us as theater people. So we're learning on the fly, really, like a lot of people are.
Let's go down that rabbit hole for just a minute. You got into theater because you have this relationship with an audience.
Yeah.
Neither of you are filmmakers. You didn't
No.
set out to be filmmakers.
No, or radio playmakers.
Well, we can adapt, can't we?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So talk about in an age when everything is streaming, everything is video, the young folks have everything on their phones. Why theater? What is going to draw young people to theater, either in the audience or on stage, in this era of high-tech streaming of the whole world?
I think it gives a different connection.
Yeah.
I think that, in fact, they've done some research. I've read some studies that they went in and they put a pulse monitor on everyone, and they realized that not only was everyone's pulse at the same beat, they're also breathing was at the same pace. And so I think that physiologically, when we come together as a community, it is a very different experience than when we're looking at our phone, that our bodies actually sync up. And I think that there's also a spiritual connection that you have with an audience, right? When you're laughing at something, or when you're literally crying with a bunch of people in the room who may be total strangers. I mean, you might have a couple of people you're with, but most of them are probably complete strangers. I think that it's just a different experience. Along with that, I think this idea of ephemeral nature of theater, that it happens one time and you're the only one who is going to see this performance, I think is a really unique experience. And I think people are looking for that today. I think they're looking for experiences. I think they're looking for connection.
Yeah, and you see that in what are the 3 things that have been hurt athletics. We as humans love to cheer for our heroes, and we love to boo the opposing team. There's something in that that's just normal to us. So sports has tried to navigate that. That's a live event. Even with the way we like to worship, we're really lucky in this country that we have a lot of freedoms. So even if you're not Christian and you have other faiths, just that coming together as a community, that corporate singing, that reading of those sacred texts, praying together, and just like being in space together. So COVID has affected those three areas. And we're seeing in this generation that they're concerned about that, because we have had to talk with students about, well, we might go live, we might go Zoom, we might do a Zoom performance. And some of them are like, I don't want to do that. That's not, some kids are taking these gap years at school because they live so much on these devices that college gives them a moment to be in the presence of other people, and they're getting fatigued. They're getting fatigued on that. And so theater will never be as big as film or television, but there are things that theater provides people that just film doesn't. That collective cheering and collective tearing is really profound in how we even understand what we should cheer about, and whether we should have laughed at that or whether we should have empathy for someone suffering. So hopefully we'll find this year a balance between being able to still tell stories online, but still getting a few people live to just feel that experience.
Let's talk about theater outside of this community on the Indiana Wesleyan campus in Marion and Grant County. We have Marion Civic Theater that has been around for a very long time. That goes through generational changes. They're in the middle of one of those changes right now. You have the Taylor University Theater folks. There also is a theater group that performs over in the Fairmont area at the theater over there. What can Indiana Wesleyan, what can you folks do to encourage and gender empower these other theater groups?
Well, we have had some good relationships with some of the bodies. It is hard when everyone's trying to put up shows. We've had relationships with Hoosier Shakes, where some of our majors get involved in Hoosier Shakes. I've been part of CSA, where I can help put up shows and teach acting classes. We have kids who do civic. We have community friends who do civic. So I think one of the challenges is, especially in a small town like ours, is when all the different groups know what's sort of going on and can at least talk to each other. I think being able to go to each other's stuff. I saw photos this weekend of our majors. I think they'd gone out to go see Taylor's Godspell. They'd done Godspell outdoors. And it was really fun to see some of our majors go there and support kids that they know in other programs. So I think just general support, knowing what each other's doing, sharing resources has been great. Civic's been great about, we've had shows where if it weren't for Civic, we wouldn't have costumes, because Carla Tucker has every costume on the planet up there in that second floor.
Isn't she amazing?
She's awesome. CSA, they house some of our props and scenery, and they just recently used some of our swords for a class, so we co-share with them.
And then sometimes we actually have had CSA come to campus and do some of their shows here. So we've had them do, and some events, I think, as well, where they've come. So we try to share resources, which is, there's a term for it, synergy, right? Where you're pooling your resources and your audiences.
And shared interests.
Exactly.
And I always, when I was at CSA, I still teach classes there, but I've always said this: Marion and Grant County deserves good theater. It may not ever be huge, and it doesn't have to be, but the citizens in this county deserve to hear good stories. I mean, this was the birthplace of James Dean, one of the most iconic film actors, and
Love the line that they used several years ago, where cool was born.
I mean,
Nice
who would have thought that?
And a long history of theater before we even came, right? That they can trace back. And so not only a history, but an appreciation for the arts, which you don't always experience in communities. Sometimes you come into communities and there's just no appreciation for theater, art, or music. But something that I have seen here is that there is.
You feel good about Marion and Grant County in that sense. How long have you lived here now?
10 years.
Okay, so you...
Yeah, this is my 10th year at IWU.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll ask both of you. You're doing what you want to be doing right now. Talk about 10 years from now. Where do either of you want to be?
On a beach. COVID free.
I'm into that.
Ed, I love that question. I really hope that in 10 years this community has really started to thrive a lot in the arts, visual, performing, music. It's ridiculous how much talent's in our little county. I think sometimes we're a little bit of a hidden treasure in Indiana. Probably don't get the press because we're not Indianapolis or Fort Wayne. Me personally, just for me, like we've talked about building a legacy here that, 20 years from now when we're like super older, I don't want to say old.
When you're middle-aged.
Age is a construct. But it'd be great if she and I had a legacy. Me personally, I have really enjoyed getting to once in a while just help Bobby Owensby with her Black History Club. I think that there's community of theater artists here who have yet to be able to get their voice out there. I'd love for us to. I've talked to many people at IWU in the community about. I'd love it if IWU would partner with the NAACP and start doing things out at Weaver, doing like original works.
Oh, yeah.
Go out to the Weaver settlement. I've talked about this with many people. I think we would be well positioned as theater professors to host like a playwriting festival where we encourage new works. I think new works are really great. I really appreciate that Hoosier Shakes and Taylor and IWU and CSA and Civic do works from canon that people are familiar with. But if there was some way we could generate new works, like new voices is so essential to the arts.
Yeah.
So I think we're in positions to do that. We do that here. We do a playwriting festival.
Is there good writing being done by young playwrights?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but where can they
Yes.
stage it? They write it, but then where can they do it?
Yep.
And where can they be premiered? And that's where we, I think, are in unique positions to help with that. And the synergy. If IW partners with others once in a while, CSA tries to do that, Hoosier
Yeah.
Shakes tries to do that, Civic is doing that. Then now new stories can happen about Grant County, about just the American experience or just what it is, just to be a person.
Yeah.
What's the next experience that the community of Marion can share with Indiana Wesleyan University Theater? What will you be doing that folks can participate in?
We talked about Vintage Hitchcock earlier, so we're still trying to figure out all of that, but we'll definitely be live streaming to the community.
We don't have a date yet.
In November, the first weekend of
Fourth,
November,
fifth,
the 4th,
5th, 6th.
seventh?
That Sunday, whatever that Sunday is.
Yeah.
Thursday to Sunday.
Thursday to Sunday. And then we're actually getting our community involved in our next production. It's called Ajax. And Steve is actually directing this. And and the reason why we chose it, our theme this year is finding community. And we particularly wanted to do a show about PTSD because of our Veterans Hospital that's so well established here in our community. We wanted to do something that reaches out to them. And so we're doing a play that was actually written about 2,000 years ago by the Greeks. It's called Ajax, and it deals with soldiers and PTSD. So we've reached out to some community members. We're actually bringing a community member back to our community who's living in New York City. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, we've got a guest actor, and we actually have 3 guest actors. We have one who is a Marine and served our nation, and his brother served as well. So we have a few people in the community who are in the show, and we're hoping to make some connections with some of the Legion posts and the VFWs and the VA, just to let
And the ROTC.
just to let folks know in the region, especially in northern Indiana, hey. And it won't be political in that whether war is right or wrong or which president. It's really just about the cost of war on men and women.
And
so
their
it's
families.
in their families.
They are the ones who
Yeah,
pay the
what
price.
happens to the
Exactly.
soldiers, not who's making the decisions per se, because that's a different play. So we wanted to focus on, what is it to be a man or woman who has served and feels, betrayed or disconnected from your community?
And do we have a date for that?
That's February.
Yeah, well, currently it's February, so
Yeah,
we're trying to
Well,
be flexible.
everything.
But
Ish.
we're looking at February, about mid-February, the 11th, starting in about 5 or 6 days. And we've actually gotten streaming rights for that as well. We are personally working with the playwright to be able to get streaming rights for this production.
And then we got a musical in the spring, and we know so little about that. It's scheduled for March, but we don't have streaming rights for that. So if we do it, like, you have to show up and hopefully like get that ticket.
Yeah.
It might be the hottest seat in town.
Maybe. It's Once Upon a Mattress. And it deals with systemic injustices. So it's interesting. In a comic way, we're going to put on a musical that deals with a community that has issues. And all of our communities do. So we're
Trust
excited
me,
to do
we'll
that.
still have issues in this.
We will.
We will. We'll have new
They'll
issues.
just be different issues.
We'll sing about them in
I
this
hope
one.
it's different issues.
Yeah.
I hope it's not the same issues.
Yeah.
Katie Wampler, Steve Wood, thank you. On behalf of the Fusion Arts Alliance, we thank you for tuning in. Stay with us. We will be back again next week to talk about the arts in Marion and Grant County.